All right. Next session here we go. It's our keynote speaker. I am so excited to introduce to you Case Kenny. Case is a mindfulness expert, author and keynote speaker who has been teaching the language of optimism for the last 10 years. His podcast, New Mindset, Who Dis, has resonated with millions of listeners. He's had hundreds of millions of impressions through his books, his writing, and his podcast over the last 10 years. His work has been featured on Good Morning America, The Today Show, NBC, and a bunch of other outlets. He's done keynotes for NFL teams, the One Hotel, Nespresso, the Four Seasons, Nike, and Chase. And just getting to know Case over the last 2 months, it's really powerful how prolific he is as a content creator and how deeply he's committed to sharing these positive messages. So, for the next 25 minutes, just be really present to Case and what he's going to talk about today. So, big round of applause for Case Kenny. Woo! Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, man.
All right.
Here's the mic. Thank you.
Yeah. There you go.
Good?
Yeah.
Check. Hello. Thank you for having me. Very cool start to the day. Only in Miami, I suppose. Massages, dances, opera. I live in Miami. I've lived here for the last 3 years. I'm from Chicago. But yeah, thank you for having me. I think it's always a privilege to be welcomed into other people's communities. I'm a stranger, you don't know me, and yet you're giving me the mic, so I think that is a privilege. And I'm excited to share a message with you. I'll go for like 30 minutes. Usually these are like 60 minutes, so I'll fly through it. But I'm really excited to talk about optimism. And I have two pieces of good news in regards to optimism, in that optimism isn't just something you feel or don't feel for that matter. It's not just a mood, it's a method. And it's a method that's backed by neuroscience and years, decades of research that also, double good news, shows that optimists make more money, are promoted more often, have longer lasting relationships, are healthier, are more creative, are more original, are more likable. The list goes on through this idea of optimism. And I'm going to define optimism because it means different things to different people. But the root of this is language. I call these keynotes the language of optimism. My background is in language. My academic degrees are in language. I'm a lanky, pale dude from the Midwest, but my majors in college were Mandarin Chinese and Modern Standard Arabic. I've also studied Hindi and Urdu and Latin. I've spent basically the last 20 years obsessed with language, obsessed with syntax, grammar, word choice, translation. And if there's anything that I've learned, it's that the limits of our vocabulary, literally word choice, are the limits of our perspective. And if we could expand our vocabulary, we could expand what's possible for us. And that's the root of optimism as I define it. But before we even get to optimism, we have to do something else, right? In order to have either an optimistic worldview or, not recommended, a pessimistic worldview, first we have to do something, and that is we have to be grounded in the moment, right? We have to be present enough to say, here's how I feel, and here's what I'm going to make of it. Here's how I'm going to explain these happenings to me. So before we talk about optimism, we have to talk about mindfulness. That's another one of those words that means different things to different people. There's no wrong definition of mindfulness. I'll share how I define it and why it's so closely related adjacently to language and optimism. We can go around and I could say, we have a great room of entrepreneurs here. I'm sure everyone here has a mindful habit that keeps you grounded, that keeps you present, that gives you clarity, right? So whether it's meditation or yoga or breath work or, sound therapy, anything, any form, I think we would probably agree that a core definition of mindfulness, to be mindful, is to listen to yourself. It's a pretty good starting point for anything in life. So I think a good point to start is mindfulness is the art of listening to yourself, right? It's the art of bringing your mind and body to the same place and just feeling what you feel and being non-judgmental of it and accepting it and surrendering to it, right? We have to do this. This is how any action, any goal, any ambition comes to light. We have to be present enough. We have to listen to ourselves. And to my point, there's so many great modalities nowadays to put yourself in that headspace where you could tune out the noise and feel what you feel. We have to do this. But there's a second step that I think adds such practicality to mindfulness, which leads to optimism, which leads to our ability to act on what we feel, which is mindfulness is listening to yourself. But in my world, mindfulness, perhaps more importantly, is how do you talk to yourself about the things that you feel when you listen to yourself? Mindfulness is listening to yourself, and mindfulness is talking to yourself. And the latter is something that I think is rather underrated. You know, I do a lot of these keynotes, and really the only group that I've found that already does this aggressively are athletes, right? The idea of self-talk and self-dialogue is so encouraged in high-pressure, intense situation. I've always found athletes to be really focused on this. But average people, myself included, we don't really think about that, right? We feel a feeling, we slap a label on it, and we try our best to navigate it. We feel anxious, we say, man, I feel anxious, and we try to work our way through it. The art of optimism is how do we label these emotions, how do we talk about them, and how do we stitch them together in a sentence? It's the most practical thing in the world, and it's the foundation for leveraging the impact that is an optimistic mindset. So we refer to it as explanatory optimism. That is, how do we interpret the world around us? I'll get to that in a second. But generally speaking, so if mindfulness is listening to ourselves and mindfulness is talking to ourselves, I realized over the years, to try to simplify, we generally, with the words that we use, put ourselves in one of four like energetic categories of language. And it goes like this for illustration purposes. First, we're living, we're loving, we're working, we're doing these things, and shit happens to us, randomness happens to us, and we say, man, life happens to me, T-O, life happens to me. This is an inevitability of life, right? We cannot control everything that happens to us in life. We turn around, we look at what happens, explanatory, we say, life happens to me. Fair statement, can't avoid it. The more we live, the more we love, the more we learn. We say, okay, yes, life happens to me, but life also happens through me, T-H-R-O-U-G-H, right? No matter what happens to me, I can, at minimum, make something of it, whether that's turning it into a standard, a boundary, a piece of clarity through me. Life happens to me, life happens through me. The more you live, the more you learn, the more you love, you'll say, okay, life happens by me, very much so. I worked in advertising technology sales for 12 years before transitioning majored in Chinese, worked in advertising, did government work. I've done all these things. I've reinvented myself as a man, as a person, as a professional many times over. Life happens by me. We have this incredible agency, of course. And then I think we're really where we want to be, which again, I promise I'll define optimism in a second, is life happens for me, right? And that's, you know, very tough at times to be in a hurtful, confusing, frustrating moment and to say this is happening for me. It's almost the antithesis of the human default. But we all have examples in our lives where, right, with the benefit of hindsight, with the benefit of dots to connect, to say that thing happened for me, right? It led me down this path, and that path led me here, and I could say with clarity that here is where I belong, life happens for me, right? So you can just see how with simple word changing, our relationship to ourselves, our relationship with events changes very quickly in that context. Life happens to me and through me and by me and for me. And this is really important because when we think about optimism, I define it as follows. Optimism is the belief that things can change. It's not a butterflies and rainbows definition, right? I think it's a mistake to think that optimism is about positivity. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But optimism for me is the belief that things can change. Emotions can change, careers can change, relationships can change. It's the belief in movement. And the words we use to describe our emotions dictate that movement in our head. So I always say that the words we use to describe our emotions dictate how we experience the emotions. I'll say that one more time. The words we use to describe our emotions dictate how we experience them. So we're feeling emotions. We're feeling something. We're feeling anxious, a normal human thing. We put a label on it. We talk about that emotion. That either fuels the emotion or it calms the emotion. It either pours gas on a fire or it makes peace with the emotion, all with language and word choice, right? So this is the difference between saying I'm stuck and I'm transitioning. I'm overwhelmed and I'm adapting. I'm nervous and I'm excited, right? It's not the art of putting a positive label on a negative emotion. It's about adding movement to the emotion, and it's about using word choice to do that. I always give the following example just to illustrate the power of word choice when it comes to emotional states. The one I reference is these researchers had two groups of college students. The first group, they said, hey, one by one, you're going to go into this room. You're each going to do a task in there. You're going to be alone. You're going to be isolated. And then afterwards, we're going to ask you some questions. The other group, they said, hey, one by one, you're going to go into this room. You're going to be alone. You're going to have some me time. You're going to do the task. Afterwards, we're going to ask you some questions. So they primed their minds for the state of being alone as either isolation or me time. You can probably see where I'm going with this, right? The group that was told it was isolation versus me time, the me time group overwhelmingly showed higher signs of emotional self-sufficiency, happiness, resilience in doing the task, and generally they were happier. Right, just through naming the emotion, right? Everyone was alone in that circumstance. One was naming it isolation, the other was naming it me time. Words really matter. Sentence structure really, really matters. Neuroscientists have shown that people who use movement-oriented verbs and sentence structures when it comes to reacting to emotional states, I am learning, I am transitioning, right? I'm adapting. It activates the same neural circuitry in your brain as if you're actually physically moving. So you can prime your body to move in the same way that your mind responds to that circuitry. Another interesting idea I've always found is people who use conditional phrases, that is, maybe, it's possible, I can, right? Very basic stuff, put themselves in what's called an anticipatory state. The whole idea of optimism is to put yourself in an anticipatory state. That is, you anticipate that good things are possible, that things can change, not because you're magically going to receive them, but because it influences your behavior. Right, so that's the idea with word choice. And the most important thing that we can do when it comes to creating optimism, the belief that things can change, psychologists refer to it as a self-distancing. Right? So when we have that emotion, we feel anxious, how can you put distance between you and that emotion? I have found, as I'm sure you have as well, when you feel an emotion, your default is to say, man, I'm anxious, or I feel anxious. I would say, and your therapist and psychologist would agree, that that's not a great way to identify with your emotions. That adds so much totality to the emotion. An emotion comes from a part of you. There's all kinds of great frameworks, and there's one called IFS, but the idea is that we are complex humans. There are many, many different parts to us, and emotion is coming from a part of us. And we have to speak in reference to that. To say I am anxious means the totality of who you are is anxious. No, it's a part of you that feels anxious. And when we speak to ourselves in that respect, we have to pay respect to that. So we say, a part of me feels. Another interesting thing when it comes to the idea of self-distancing is neuroscientists have shown that you can literally calm your entire nervous system when you're feeling a negative emotion in 1 second by speaking to yourself in the third person. And it sounds really goofy and it sounds weird to say, man, Case is feeling anxious right now. Sarah's feeling anxious. Dave, Joe is feeling anxious. But the ability to distance yourself from that emotion separates yourself from it. You're no longer in the moment. It's as if you're giving advice to a friend. So there's all kinds of different interesting sentence structures that allow for you to do this. I would argue that English really sets us up to fail when it comes to just how we speak about emotions. To my point, we say I am or I feel. Other languages, I'm sure we've got some amazing bilingual people in here. Other languages don't really do that, or at least they allow for us to not do that, right? So like in Arabic, for instance, you could say I am sad, right? You could say ana hazin, but you could also say andi hazan, which would be like sadness is upon me. And in Chinese, for instance, you never use the word is, humanity is in regard to a emotion, right? So you could say I am sad in Chinese, but you would say Wu Hen Shangxin, which would literally just mean like sadness is passing through me and by me or on top of me. So it's just interesting anecdotes for the way that we can relate to emotions. Other languages show us that emotions are visitors, right? They're not moving in. These are things that we could pick up and put down. And we owe it to ourselves to think about these negative emotions. I often find that when people talk about optimism, it's all about positivity. And it is, but that's step 2. Step 1 is we have to be as specific as we can about the negative feeling that we're feeling. I think about it like being in a swimming pool. If you really want to go fast, you have to kick off the wall, right? You're going to go much faster than if you just start swimming in the middle of the pool. The negative emotion is the wall, and we have to kick off it. Something called prospect theory in behavioral science, which basically says the more specific we can be about what we want in life, the more likely we are to achieve it, right? So the difference between saying, man, I want to be successful versus I want to be the top grossing salesperson in my region, right? The brain responds to both. One is ambiguous, one is specific. The more specific, our behavior follows. We notice opportunities. The brain is an operating system, a search engine. It'll help us find that. So that's on the positive side, to be specific. We have to be specific on the negative side as well. we have to name the negative emotion as specifically as we can. I keep saying anxious, right? That's a word that we all generally feel a lot. I would ask you, is anxious the right word? Maybe. It's certainly not the wrong word, but is it a specific word? When you're feeling anxious, are you feeling anxious? Or are you feeling overwhelmed, overstimulated, overcommitted, indecisive, comparing yourself, judgmental? Right? So we have forest words and we have tree words. Anxious, anxiety, that's a forest word. Let's get to the tree words. This allows for us to kick off something, and then what I'll take you through right now, which is formulate sentence structure around, I feel a certain way, but what is the rest of that? And I would also even argue, and I'm in the middle of writing a book that's coming out like 2 years from now, and so my mind is full of all this interesting pieces of research. There's an order to optimism that really matters. Right? So what I'm suggesting is we always feel the negative, and then we circle the positive. We add movement to the way that we feel, and we allow for that positive to present itself. A lot of research has shown, actually, that the order in which you think about what you want really, really matters. That is the difference between, do I visualize success first, or do I visualize the obstacles that inevitably I'm going to have to overcome to be successful? The order matters. If you visualize success first, your brain releases dopamine, it commits you to the task, and then when you inevitably come across obstacles, you treat them as problems to be solved rather than obstacles and reasons to give up. If you think about obstacles first and then try to visualize success second, all the research shows that inevitably that group tries less, gives up sooner, is less resilient. So just something to think about, like optimism requires us to be grounded in reality. In fact, there's a study from the war in Vietnam from the 60s and 70s where POWs in Vietnam, the ones unfortunately who didn't make it, they were optimists. They were optimists in the sense that they kept every week, they said, we'll be out by Christmas, we'll be out by Easter, we'll be out by the summer. And then when that didn't happen, they, according to some of the research, they died of broken hearts because they weren't grounded in the moment. So optimism requires us to say, yes, I believe that I will get out, for instance, but right now this is very difficult and this is very taxing. So we have to do both. Optimism is never about ignoring the negative, it's about pushing off the negative and then embracing the positive. So with that being said, usually people had journals for this, but everyone has a phone, I'm assuming. So I'd ask you to pull out your phone, which is a weird thing. I'd ask you to point your attention to your phone. I want you to write a couple sentences down here to illustrate these ideas, right? So if we think about mindfulness as listening to ourselves, mindfulness as talking to ourselves, we're talking to ourselves about an emotion. So I want you to write down two things, maybe in your notes app, or if you have a pen and paper, even better. But I want you to write down two things. The first is I want you to write down a negative emotion that you're kind of feeling in your life recently. Just a negative emotion, a negative adjective. Frustrated, lost, sad, indecisive, angry, impatient, something that you would label as just kind of energy that you don't really want. Write it down. Take 10 seconds. Negative emotion. And let's do the opposite of that. I want you to write down a way that you want to feel, a positive emotion, right? So it could be the opposite of that negative emotion or just the thing that you've circled on your vision board for 2026 that you want to feel. You want to feel fulfilled, you want to feel loved, you want to feel successful, whatever. In your own language, I won't guide you. So you have two words in your notes app, negative emotion, positive emotion. And we'll use that kind of as the basis here. Time check. Great. Okay. So the idea with an exercise like this, which I would call, journaling for the sake of optimism, is we're going to explore the space between those two emotions. We're going to allow ourselves to feel the negative, but move towards the positive. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about gratitude. I think most exercises in vulnerability to try to empower ourselves to be present, to be mindful, start with gratitude. I'm sure a lot of people here do gratitude journaling in the morning. It's great. I have found for me that I don't always feel grateful. Right? I could do a gratitude exercise, but do I feel grateful? When I feel grateful, I know I feel grateful. It is a mind and body and heart experience. I could feel it. And sometimes I feel like writing down 3 things I'm grateful for in the morning doesn't do the trick for me. Maybe you're the same. So how do you truly feel gratitude? Where you feel it in your heart, you feel it in your mind, you get goosebumps? Well, for me, it's always the art of bringing past pain into the present and realizing that you've healed from it, you've moved on from it, you've figured out how to evolve through it. So it requires a good memory to look back and say, man, that was a hurtful time. Now in the present, that's no longer me. I overcame that through me, for me, right? We have that perspective. I always reference the work of Thich Nhat Hanh, who you might be familiar with. He has a quote about a non-toothache, where he says that when we have a toothache, we know that not having a toothache is a wonderful thing, yet when we don't have a toothache, we're still not happy, right? So it's the ultimate human condition. When something sucks in our lives, that's all we can think about. We don't want it, we want to heal from it, and then inevitably we do, because we're humans, and that's what we're amazing at, adapting and surviving and overcoming. We just move on to the next thing. Gratitude exists in reminding ourselves of that toothache. So for this, I just want you to think for a second, and then I'll have you write something. Think about something in your past, last month, last 3 months, last 6 months, that at some point in your life was a toothache, emotionally, physically, something that was frustrating, debilitating, and hurt you. It made you feel a negative way, but now in the present, you could look at that thing and say, no, it no longer has that weight in my life. Right? So maybe you were a runner and you tore your hamstring and you couldn't run for 3 months, and that really affected your mental health. Or maybe you went through a breakup a year ago, and at one point you were a mess, and now you're not so much. You've healed through it. So just think about that for a second. Search your memory bank. Think about that past toothache. And I just want you to write quickly down, I just want you to write the following. You want to write, I'm grateful to not, and I want you to describe that past pain. Just describe the past pain. I'm grateful to not wake up in the morning and have searing pain in my mouth. I'm grateful to not feel like I was betrayed by someone I was supposed to spend my life with. I'm grateful to not. Just describe that past pain. And as you do, the idea is that you feel in the present immediately lighter, because that's no longer you. So just take 30 seconds. I'm grateful to not. Think back, describe that. We're grounding ourselves in emotions here, and then we're going to bring it all together. Okay, just for the sake of time, we're gonna move here. Let's think a little bit about visualization, right? So I talked about the idea of feeling a negative way, wanting to feel a positive way, your ability to put words to both, and prescribe movement between the two. I'm sure we have a room of people here who visualize in some capacity, right? Visualization is a very powerful technique neurologically and from the soul to find clarity on what you want in life. And there's all great neuroscience behind the idea of, visualization is intrinsically tied to memory. It activates the same circuitry in the brain. If you can visualize in depth, you fire the same circuitry as if you actually lived the moment. I've always found that pretty interesting, but that's not the point of this. Let's do something real quick together, and I'll illustrate the power of creating familiarity with future clarity. So let's close our eyes, and for 30 seconds, I want you to visualize. I won't give you too much instruction, but I want you to visualize in the sense of think to the future, think about that breakthrough moment, the thing you're working toward, the way that you want to feel. It's in the future, and I just want you to visualize that moment where you're living that reality. You've accomplished the thing, you've received the outcome, you're feeling the way you said you want to feel in that first prompt. And just take 20 seconds on your own, I'll stop talking, and just visualize that moment. Okay, come back to me. Great. Powerful exercise. Let's try it again, though, from a different perspective, right? I have found, and maybe you did it this way, that when it comes to visualization, that is, we look to the future and we try to find clarity around that moment where I feel the way I want to feel. Typically, we think about it on like a linear line, right? Time moving left to right, and we look over here, we think about the future, and we kind of fill in the blank. We're fantasizing is what we're doing, right? We're filling in the blank. We're fantasizing about that future moment. Oh man, it's going to be so great. It's going to feel like this. I have found that belief more aligns with the fake it till you make it mentality, which again is great. I'm writing a book on it, but fake it till you make it when it comes to visualization is not an effective strategy. The more effective strategy is feel it until it's familiar. When you create familiarity with an emotion, that is when you put yourself in that anticipatory state. So let's close our eyes. Let's do it again. I'll give you a slightly different instruction. Same as before, though. I want you to think about that future moment, that future breakthrough, You look on that line, you look left, you look right, it's over in the future. But I want you to go past it. I want you to go past it on the line. You're moving right, and then I want you to look back at it. I want you to look left on the line. So the moment already happened, the breakthrough already happened. I want you to look back at it, and I want you to visualize again, but this time from the perspective, I remember when. It's in the past, it's a memory. And I want you just to visualize from that perspective. Same exercise, but you're past it, you're looking back. I remember when. Be specific. Where were you? What were you wearing? What day was it? Just do your best in 30 seconds, but this time from the perspective of you're past it. I remember when. Okay, back to me. We're speeding through here. I got the 5-minute warning. But the energy is different there, right? The idea with optimism, the idea with mindfulness is we create familiarity with the emotion that we want to feel, the movement associated with it that puts us in this explanatory state of being, it puts us in the anticipatory state of being. So for the next prompt, let's do this. I want you to write the following. So you named a negative emotion, you named a positive emotion. Likely you named those with forest words, which is fine. Let's try to be more specific one more time. So again, think about that negative emotion, think about the positive emotion. I want you to fill in the blanks in these prompts. The first is, I am moving past blank, and I am moving toward blank. Fill in those blanks. I am moving past. What are you moving past? You wrote that you feel a negative way. Add some teeth to that. Be more specific about it. You're moving past feeling, okay. You're moving past accepting, being, not doing, tolerating. Fill in that blank with something more specific around that negative emotion, and then do the same for the positive emotion. What are you moving toward? Are you not just moving towards feeling rewarding, feeling fulfilled, feeling loved? Be more specific about it. What does that actually look like? Add some teeth to it. I am moving past blank, negative, specific. I am moving toward blank, positive, specific. Take 30 seconds. Okay, we're flying. 2 more prompts. Let's talk about word choice. Again, we've talked a lot about adjectives, right? This is typical human nature. We describe ourselves in terms of feelings, ways of being, things that are happening to us. I have found overwhelmingly that optimists speak in verbs. And this is backed by a lot of research when it comes to how do you celebrate yourself? What do you celebrate about yourself? I live in a land of wellness and affirmations. I write these red pen quotes on Instagram that get shared a lot. They're affirmations. People love affirmations. I have found that when it comes to affirmations, most people speak in adjectives. I am worthy, I am confident, I am successful, right? I'm magnetic. Great, love it. There's a more powerful way to do it, maybe to append to that, and that is speak in verbs, speak about effort, not qualities. Research has shown this time and time again that when you remind yourself of your effort, that is not just who you are, but what you do. That is what creates the difference between people who achieve what they want to achieve and those who don't, right? Because when you describe yourself in terms of qualities, your brain immediately moves into character defense mode. Is this me? Oh, that person might be more than me, right? It's human nature to move into that comparison, into that defense mode. When you speak in terms of efforts, right? I'm the kind of person who will figure it out, who will try again, who is first in the office, who is last out, who's willing to make 10 more cold calls than the next person. That is what creates resilience, and that is what creates this idea of optimism. So quick fill in the blank for you, and then we'll do one last one, is I just want you to write the following. I'm the kind of person who blank. And fill it in with verbs. What are the things that you do that in your mind would make you feel that first adjective, the second adjective you wrote that you want to feel, or the thing that you're moving toward? I'm the kind of person who, fill in the blank, what do you do? A couple bullets. I'm the kind of person who, if it's on the professional front, right, I'm willing to go above and beyond, go to networking events, send more cold emails, ask for what I want, right? If it's on dating, I'm the kind of person who shows up as my real self on the first date, who speaks to what I want. It's on the inner self, I'm the kind of person who practices gratitude every day, who makes time for myself, right? Things that you do, reminders of your effort. 20 seconds. Okay, let's do one last one, bring it all together. Typically I have a bunch more, but that's okay. This is just priming. So again, the idea is we feel a negative way, we name the negative way as specifically as we can. We name the positive. What are we moving toward? We fill the space with effort, we fill the space with movement, we bring it together. So let's just fill the format that I mentioned in the beginning when it comes to emotions. It's not I am anxious, it's not I feel anxious, it's a part of me feels. So let's just complete this the best we can. A part of me feels blank, but blank. A part of me feels, insert the negative here, be as specific as you can. You rewrote it twice, maybe pull from that. A part of me feels the negative, but, and then the rest I leave to you. It's creative writing. But what? What is the movement? What are you moving toward? A part of me feels stuck, but I am transitioning to a better reality. A part of me feels unlovable. A part of me feels behind. A part of me feels XYZ, but. And then just fill in the but the best you can with movement, with verbs. What are you moving toward? What are you preparing to receive? What is inevitable in your life? And then we'll land the plane here. Just take 20 seconds. Okay, we'll end it there just for the sake of time. I would also add a comment here that when it comes to creating optimism in your life, I really recommend we handwrite things. There's a lot of great neuroscience behind the mind and body connection, but I always call handwriting intentional thinking. There's something more intentional about sitting down, moving left to right on a pen and paper, feeling the tactile experience that really puts you in a mindset that says, I am freezing this negative emotion and I am prescribing movement to it. Right? It's the idea of freezing emotion. So many of our thoughts, if you into any of the work on the subconscious mind, Michael Singer, it's like so much of what we feel is not ours. It's not originating with us. We're simply receiving it. I have found it in my life difficult to separate the two. When I'm holding on to things, the brain is really good at retaining information, retaining anxiety, right? The brain is trying to keep us alive. We have to find a way to pause that, write it down, write down the negative emotion, kick off the wall, add movement to it, add the positive. Again, optimism is the belief that things can change. And I'll end it here, just for the sake of time. And yeah, thank you. I hope you got something out of it, maybe some new definitions.
Amazing stuff. Thank you for sharing. I was great. I mean, I learned so much in that 30 minutes, and words truly do shape our reality. So we're going to do 5 to 7 minutes of Q&A, so stay up here. Yep. So nice. Who has a question for Case? Isis. And our youngest Miami Made member, meet baby Lily. Hello, baby Lily. What's your question for Case?
I want to deep dive into this. Do you have a workshop?
I do workshops all the time in Miami.
I mean, not just for like big wigs.
Yeah, of course. I host my own events all the time in Miami. So follow me on Instagram. I post about it. Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I've got a lot to say. That was me trying to fill 30 minutes. So I could go for like 90 minutes and it would, but I hope that was valuable. Love it.
Hi, question for people are like bilingual but like talk 2 languages.
Yeah.
Does it affect the way you process your language and then you talk in another one?
Yeah. I wouldn't consider myself bilingual. I'm very passionate and I spent many years dedicating my life to it. I think the benefit of being bilingual is that you should describe your emotions in as many different languages as you can to show yourself that there's many different ways to interpret the permanence of the emotion. Right? So if you feel a certain way, write it down in English, write it down in Spanish, write it down in Chinese, just to show that there is an ability to reinterpret the way that we speak to ourselves. So I think that the benefit is you just have more perspective. Yeah.
Great question. All right, our opera singer, and then Tom.
Thank you so much for this. This was just a very powerful speech. I could like just starting 2026 and having our goals going, and thank you so much for that. I feel like people who talk about optimism, they had something that broke them at some point, and then they started talking about it. So I hope people would feel like sharing why you came to the realization of talking about and teach us about optimism.
For sure, and thank you for blessing us with your voice earlier. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I would say the long and short wasn't a singular moment. I think I love my family, I love my parents, but it was a very negative household. I think a lot of people can relate to the idea of catastrophizing. Maybe you had parents where anything that could go wrong was the focal point, right? Danger is around every corner, and I think that followed me into my adult years. And at a certain point, I realized that it just wasn't true, and I realized how that the like catastrophizing life, always thinking about the negative, really just diminished myself. And I worked in corporate advertising sales for 12 years. I led a sales team, and it was like I was so confident in my career, but I was so mean to myself personally and so judgmental of myself, and I just spoke to myself in such limiting voice because I kind of had inherited that mentality that, yeah, I wanted to swing the pendulum as far the other way as I could. Like, what would the opposite of living like this look like? And I think it's very much where I am now. I usually talk about delusional optimism. I'm writing a book on the interplay between optimism, delusion, and audacity, these words that I love to write about. Because the idea with optimism is it's not just a mindset, it's how it influences your behavior. And I think for me, I just didn't like how I acted, how I thought, how I felt. I think it was reflected in my relationships in my 20s, my relationship with myself. So I'm sure some people can relate to that, kind of how your upbringing follows you. But I'm grateful for that perspective. It's a for me kind of relationship for sure.
Amazing. Tom, real quick, and then Milan.
First of all, thank you so much. This is gym-filled stuff. A lot of both here.
Thank you.
And put some flesh on bones of something that I remember a long time ago. You don't have to hear this sayings and it really stick with you. The way to convert the negative feeling about yourself by adding one simple 3-letter word. And I deal with this when I coach people who lack confidence about what's speaking. I like to call this word. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And you just gave me so much more fuel for that thought and understand how that works is by saying that you're not get debt, you'll presume that you won't get there.
Yeah.
So thank you for all the depth and understanding and insight into that process.
Yeah, no, thank you for the reminder. I mean, that really is the foundation of the work. Like, yet is a powerful word because it presumes movement in how you currently feel. Again, I'm like so into writing this book right now. There's a philosopher from the 1850s, Ernest Bloch, who really pioneered this idea of yet. It's related to language, right? With language, it's like subject, predicate, right? Like Kelly is lonely, Case is sad. The idea with his philosophy, and this was back when the world was a shit show, respectfully. Things were really dark and really bad, and abundant thinking was not something that anyone did. His idea was yet. That is, you feel the idea is the reframing of Case is lonely. The yet would be Case has not yet found his group of people, right? It's a complete rewrite and a complete reframe. But it's just sharing an anecdote about what you just shared. I think that's the most powerful. If we had more time, I would do a prompt on it. But yeah, small little word.
Optimism is a sort of thing, but it's not I want to ask you.
Yeah.
These simple. Yeah. Would you say that getting to know ourselves, we inevitably become more optimistic?
Absolutely. If we get to know ourselves in terms of our efforts and our ability to be resilient, I don't see how you could become anything but optimistic, right? And again, that's why it's so important to reflect on what you've done, what you've overcome. I always say the best optimists have the best memory. I'm 37. I could look back to the last 20 years and think about all the times when I thought something was permanent, where I thought I wouldn't overcome something. And maybe I wasn't completely successful in the endeavor, but I have this, I call it receipts. Stack your receipts of things that you've overcome. I don't see how you could possibly not become optimistic in the sense of believing that things can change. And the beautiful thing about it, I always point to this piece of research, is I'm 37, there's people older than me in here, younger than me in here. We are all going to change enormously. We are, and there's one researcher who went around and he asked people 2 questions, and these were people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. He asked them 2 questions. He asked them, 1, how much have you changed in the past 10 years? And everyone was like, oh my gosh, so much. Who I was 5 years ago, who I was 10 years ago. And then he was like, cool, all right, how much do you think you'll change 10 years from now? Everyone said, probably not that much, frankly. I think I'm pretty good. I know myself. I know my morals. I know what I stand for. He's like, all right, cool, man, I'll see you in 10 years. And then he followed up with these people in 10 years, and all of them had changed drastically. Their values, their morals, everything they stood for. And these are people in their 50s, 60s, and beyond. And I think that's the most empowering thing in the world, that we have such capacity for change, and we will change, but we don't think we will. I think if we come back to that, that's a great source of optimism. You can change, circumstances can change.
Powerful. One morning, yeah.
Nice to meet you. My name is Marcelo. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Can really enjoy to see the slands. You is the beginning to be brutal. I live in one of the same. When I have to be brutal.
It's fair.
Yeah, and then okay, school. So to that point, thank you for this. What, in the common of the words, what will you, from your experience, you're obsessed with this, which is cool. What will you say are the most shared in our humanity pain bonds and negative self-talk? And what would you say from your exercise would be something in the blanks that you've proven that it will transform people from stopping that negative self-talk?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I mean, I would say typically most of the anecdotes that fuel me, that is times when people are negative about themselves and negative about their circumstances, are life transitions. I think I talked to a bunch of people beforehand, we're all in some kind of transition, whether it's a career transition, whether it's finding clarity in ourselves transition. I have found that that's the time when people go to one extreme or the other. They either say, this is the moment, it's leading me somewhere great, or transition is proof that I messed up so bad that I had to start over again, and inevitably this means I'm wrong. So like, life transitions this is where the self-talk, this is where the optimism is everything in life. And I would even argue that we're never not transitioning in some sense, especially in light of what I just said about change. So yeah, I think that would be the context for it. And it's filling that transition with movement, with explanatory optimism. There's so much here when it comes to like, how do we interpret this transition? How do we interpret what's happening to us? How do we interpret what's not happening to us? So if anything, an answer, non-answer would just like, if you're in a transition, this is the time to at minimum just think about the way that you're speaking to yourself.
Amazing. We're going to wrap it up there. One more round of applause for Case. Hey, follow him on Instagram. How can we find you? Find out about your books, your services, and your brand.
Yeah, it's case.kenny on Instagram. I read these red pen quotes.
Case.Kenny?
Case.Kenny, can't miss me. I've got a couple books, but you can find them all on Amazon. Just search for Case Kenny. I do a bunch of events in Miami, so I always post them on Instagram. I'm throwing a dance party on the 24th. My fiance is a DJ, so if you want to come, it's at Luna Soul, a nightclub. It's going to be a lot of fun, just cool, optimistic people. But yeah, thank you for having me.
And your podcast?
I have a podcast, but New Mindset Who Dis. Quick hits, solo hosted. I've done 765 episodes over the years, so a lot to say.
Incredible, man. Case,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much,
Thank
brother.
you, bro.
This is awesome.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate you. All right. We got 3 minutes of announcements, guys, and we're going to wrap up.